Hi everyone, and many thanks for coming along today. We hope to have a good conversation and plenty of comments and questions welcome from you as well. So if there's anything you want to chip in or ask a question at any point, raise your hand. We have a nice cozy room here, so it'll be very easy to get some chat going. So as Fionnuala said, my name is Sarah Carey. I'm a columnist with the Irish Independent. It's European Gender Equality Week, and it's focusing on women in the digital world, and that's what we're here to talk about today. And talk about the twin sides of that, how the digital world maybe can be a threat to women's safety, but also a huge opportunity to empower women. And we're going to hear lots about that. The Parliament wishes to highlight and seek solutions to the growing issue of online harassment and cyber violence. But the digital age has transformed the way we live, work and connect, and offering huge opportunities for empowerment, innovation and inclusivity. So we're going to talk about those opportunities and challenges right now. And I have four wonderful columnists. The first one, panelists, I'm the columnist. Regina Doherty is an MEP, and she's a former TD for Meath East, Minister for Employment and Social Affairs, a Chief Whip and leader of the Seanad. So a lot of experience under her belt. I'd say there's much she has not seen and won't be able to tell us about today. Lorraine Curham is the founder of Fierce, which is a name I love. That's a network supporting women founders who are building tech startups. She's also the National Digital Research Centre's head of operations at Dogpatch Labs. And the NDRC has supported hundreds of startups to grow and scale around Ireland and gain venture funding and expand across Europe and the US. Teresa Weafer, to my right, is the Government Affairs and Public Policy Community Affairs Manager at Google, and she was previously involved in the Ringsend and District Response to Drugs, the RDRD, so she's some great experience too. And finally, Dr. Sinan Asci is a postdoctoral researcher at the DCU Anti-Bullying Centre, and he's building something called the Kilter DTIF project, and that's to help develop a parental controls technology to assist with the detection of cyberbullying, self-harm and grooming behaviours online, and he's going to be telling us a lot about that. But I'm going to start with Regina. So look, you're maybe about 4 or 5 months into being an MEP now, so can you tell us a little bit about efforts that the Parliament and maybe the Commission are making to try and combat gender issues online?
Hello everybody, and thank you for having me today. As Sarah said, I am a new MEP, but I'm not new to politics or to public life, so as to be exposed to some of the ills maybe around life today. But I just want to say before we have the conversation that when we have these conversations in context, I think when we women get together, we spend an awful lot of our time talking about the bad side of innovation, and I think we really need to talk in context about the wonderful side of innovation, but how we're being left behind in it because there isn't enough of us. But anyway, the last number of months for me, the two committees that I've been put on is the Economy Committee and the Internal Markets Committee. The Internal Markets Committee is the one that drafted the DSA, which is the Digital Safety Act. It took some years because there's so much online that's now reflected of the offline world of illegal crime against women and vulnerable members of society, that we needed to reflect in our laws how as to catch that awfulness when it became online. And the Digital Service Act is an absolutely wonderful piece of legislation, but the real context of where we are at the moment is because the 27 member states haven't properly enacted it yet, and so the real powers that it has haven't been felt locally yet in any member state. I think we're already having the conversation to say that it didn't go far enough and maybe we need to revisit it. We don't need to revisit it. We need to make sure that Ireland and that every other 27 member states actually creates laws to protect women and vulnerable people online, so that there's real teeth, there's real sanctions, and there's real repercussions, so that we can stop having the only conversation that women seem to have, which is about making ourselves safe online. We do need to be safe, our children need to be safe. Everybody needs to be safe online and respectful of each other, the same way as we expect the standards in I was in real life, but actually our life is real now, it's online. But we also need to really have the conversation about how we're being left behind as women in the world of innovation and technology, and support each other to make sure the women who have fantastic ideas of creativity to make new businesses get the supports that they need, get the supports from the state, either financially, legislatively, or even just in our culture to say that we have a right to be at the table and we have a right to be supported. So we need to have a balance in our conversation. And the Digital Service Act, we'll make sure, we had a committee meeting yesterday morning, we'll make sure that the Commission actually imposes fines, particularly on large platforms that don't adhere to the laws that already exist. But we need the Commission to step up to support women in the new world of tech and the advantages that it brings to us. And we as users of it need to recognise the enormous benefits there are in our lives and not allow this conversation, that tech might be bad and it might take over and it might do away with humans. We need to balance the conversation to say there's so much good out there, but whilst recognising at the same time there is huge malingnness and harm out there that now exists on the online world, where it always existed in the real world. We just weren't maybe faced with so much of it all day, every day, and we need to get that balance right.
And Regina, before I move on, that reluctance to enforce or the inability to enforce those rules, is that just a cultural reluctance, or have some practical obstacles perhaps been uncovered that weren't anticipated?
There seems to be a drag, and I say this honestly, I sat on the European Council 7 or 8 years ago when I was Minister for 4 years, and colleagues around the table would talk about issues that they were having in their countries. And I would say, gee, we're blessed in Ireland, we haven't, those issues at all. Now the issues are coming to our shores, and migration is one of the issues that we're grappling with. But our European colleagues have dealt with those issues before. There always seems to be a lag. The European Parliament will pass a law, and they're given a number of years to enact it. The digital world moves so fast, we don't have a number of years, and if it takes us a number of years to enact the new confines and regulations, well then maybe the people who are having the conversation that we need to revisit it are right, because by the time we introduce the laws, the criminal aspect of it, they'll have moved on. So we need to get smart and say, if we're really serious about protecting people, enact the laws now. Now we do have Commission a Man, and we've all seen the lovely people that work in it, but the challenge they have is absolutely enormous. And if we don't have proper, hard-hitting legislation in Ireland, in France, in the Netherlands, in Estonia, everywhere, then the crime will move far faster than we're moving. So
thank you. Sinan, can you tell us a little bit what you've discovered in your research about what is going on online?
Thank you very much at first. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So our research is still going on and will be finished by the middle of next year, but during the interim research results, we have got lots of field research to just bring up some ideas about how female users are just experiencing the online world. When I just look at the last 5 years of the reports of Anti-Bullying Center, I just recognize that female users had the lowest reporting rates, whatever they have been experiencing, really bad to them on online platforms. So which shows us that not the real numbers are really told about the female users when we just think about the experiences of them, because they are not reporting it for some various reasons that I'm going to let you know in a few minutes. But the most unwanted experience they just got in the online platforms are just based on unwanted sexual photos or requests to send some unsolicited, some explicit content or issues than boys. So that's why when we just think about female users, such behaviors, including some unsolicited, explicit photos or content, have become increasingly normalized. So we always say that digital is our new normal, but when we just think about the behaviors that we are transferring from the physical world to digital, I do not just differentiate them as online or offline, to be honest, because anything can be just offline as well when we just have layer feedback in digital platforms as well. But it could be just differentiated digital and physical. So when we just think about why female users are just being one of the targets of such misbehaviors in the online platforms, they are just particularly targeted because of their gender, while men experience hate related to their age or nationality, mostly based on the research results we have got. So when it goes to younger users, or younger demographics, like around 18 to 25, they are more likely to experience and report some online misbehaviors that they have been experiencing. But we all know that female users, many of them, do not report or act on any kind of online hate or online misbehaviors they are getting due to some skepticism about the seriousness. This is the first reason they do not report it back. Lack of knowledge on what to do, because raising the awareness is just another issue that we need to be really careful about, or disbelief in impactful outcomes when they just report it in any situation. So these are the three reasons when we just think about why female users, are not seen as they are just experiencing it as the most, users one. And when we just think about the perpetrator's perspective, most of the perpetrators of women users in the digital platforms are mostly their peers. This is just a kind of reflection from the physical world to digital one, because we already know that the female experience of female peers are definitely based on their home, as they are not just feeling themselves secure enough. This is just reported all around the world. And this is the same in the digital platforms, that they are just getting these attacks from their peers, from the same course, if they are student, from the same workplace, if they are just sharing some digital platforms together. And there are some bystanders as well to help the targets, and they often address gossip or social exclusion as the most experienced misbehaviors in the online platforms. Of course, this is not only based on the people's behaviors or the other peers or the other users. This is sometimes based on the algorithms that we are just engaged into, like creating just some male influencers or manospheres or man-influencers, however you would like to call them. And some of the platforms are really dominated with the recommendations through male influencers. So that's why the algorithms are also just making the women users or female users into these toxic experiences and materials most of the time. So this is just showing us that content created by the other users to attack specifically for female users, or just to share their own messages, disseminate whatever their ideologies are, dominates the recommendations on digital media platforms or social media platforms. It is especially in a manosphere ecosystem, which just promotes some kind of alpha male or anti-feminist narratives or some other issues that we can just think about it. So that's why we can just look at as two different sides, as you were just also talking about it. One side could be just based on the users that you're in contact with, and the other side could be the platform you are really engaging your content through. So when we just look at that, what kind of recommendations they need, or how the participants in our research would like to be treated in the case of some misbehaviors they just experience in the online platforms, they mostly just look for some stronger legislations, which is widely supported, like approximately more than 70% of the participants in different research. But they also call for greater social media accountability. So that is just a kind of way that we need to know that people are just looking for some solutions actually from the tech giants, from governments based on legislations, or some workplace support, some close circle support, or something like this. And younger people are less inclined to be in collective responsibility for tackling online hate, unfortunately. I wish it could be more, to be honest, because we're always just talking about peer supports or just group supports in the social life as we are just having in the physical life. But this shows us that this is not transferred to the digital experiences of the people mostly. And education is just seen another possible solution, whatever female users are experiencing. And when they just think about it, because I work mostly youngsters, to be honest, they are always thinking that training their parents could be just another solution, because training parents to recognize, to address whatever they experience can just mitigate the impact when they just realize what is happening in the digital world, which could make them sad or just demotivated to go on using, or some negative impacts of it. So the platform regulations, the legislations, and peer usage or peer support within family or out circle could be just seen as the most sad solutions by the participants. However, we can definitely say that there are lots of different research places that we are just talking about, like workplace, higher education institutions, school environment, or directly the social media platform they are communicating with different people. This is just not differentiating the experiences of the people mostly, but the impact of whatever they have been experienced. Because when we just think about the workplace, for example, this is just another report of ABC that I am just checking the numbers, by the way, from my notes, because I do not want to say anything wrong. The workplace experiences of the people and it's transferred to digital platforms while they are collaborating with their peers. In the workplaces, more than 25% of women experience workplace negative acts, not on them. And when they just think about it and compare it with the men or male counterparts, they just recognize that this is not only withholding the information or exclusion as common behaviors, but this is just something more than these misbehaviors that they are experiencing. And unfortunately, we all know that there is no one solution or tip or just intervention strategy that we can just, put into the place and contribute to or just, solve the issue. But this is just a general, picture that I can bring into the discussion.
That's great. I think you've touched on a lot of things that we can follow through in the conversation. I think particularly around the issue of cultural norms, because you can have legislation and workplace interventions and that, but if something becomes normal, it's very hard to beat it. On training parents, the most useful thing I was told about 15 years ago at a Department of Education seminar, and something similar was, don't be the parent who freaks out if they discover their child has seen something or been up to something untoward online. If you remain calm, they know that they can tell you about the worst thing they've seen and you can help them deal with it rather than being the one they're scared to go to because you're going to go into a panic. So that's my top tip. Teresa, Google is doing some wonderful things in the community. Will you tell everybody a little bit about those projects you're involved in? I think they're well worth hearing about.
All right, okay, great. Thanks a million.
Thank you, and it's great to be here. When I started in Google, it was about 5 years ago, but before that, I worked in the community sector in the drugs task forces and with the youth services and with the local schools. So I remember walking into Google the first day and feeling absolutely terrified, I have to be honest. I walked in thinking, oh my God, big tech, I'm in serious trouble, it's not going to happen for me, what am I doing? Total, zombie. That's what I felt like. But I learned so much along the way on that journey. I was embraced by so many people because before I went in, and this is, I know, blessed art thou among women, you're the only man sitting here, but beforehand I had every one of my bosses in the community and the voluntary sector were men. And that's not unusual, they were all men. But if I look now over the last 5 years, my boss is a woman. My boss's boss is a woman. Her boss's boss is a woman. The head of Google Ireland is a woman. So, and they're a really strong line of women. And I think they've allowed me as a woman, and I think this is really important, they've allowed me as a woman to take risks, to embrace challenges. So I brought that into the community field with me as a community relations officer for Google. We set up the education task forces. We set up the employment task force. We have it very much led by young women in the schools. They inform our programs. They're informing our policies around what we do on the employment task force and the education task force. We have some incredible people in the scene. I mean, I have to mention in particular one like Hilary Flynn, for example, in Google, who's working very closely with our partners, Bernado's, when they go out there, keeping people safe online, working away, making sure that they have the tools, the right supports. I love the piece about the parent. Make sure you stay calm. As a grandmother myself, I hope I actually do that because I think I'll be terrified when the kids come in and tell me, by the way, there's something online. But it's a scary time, but I think we all have a role to play. I've learned through the great work that I'm doing with programs, people empowering fantastic leaders in the community to do the work. It takes a village. It's not just one sector. It takes a village. It takes a whole community to get this right. But Regina mentioned earlier on, we were living with this way beyond the digital world, and now it's right up close. And I think our own role, how we actually support each other in the different sectors as women, is really important.
Teresa, on the empowerment piece, can you tell people about the woman who became a baker in your own home? I think this is a great story.
I love this story.
Yeah.
So on the employment task force, they set up, we've identified a couple of projects around the Train the Trainer programme and the Digital Academy we recently launched down in Ringsend, where our headquarters are. But there was a young woman that came to us and said, you know, I'm not going to get this opportunity. I know Regina met them down in the Fair Play. I'm never going to get an opportunity to go out and train or do anything with my life. I'm going to really struggle with this. So I'll just learn online, but that's it. But one of her skills that she had was she was a fantastic baker. She loved to bake. And everyone wanted her to make the wedding cake or the birthday cake or the Christmas cakes, the puddings. So she decided she became a teacher of her own skill after the Train the Trainer programme that we put in place. She opened up her own bakery from her home, and her first contract was with Brown Thomas. And it's continuing and continuing. She has 2 little boys, autistic children, so she's not going to get out. She's really, really strong on, you can do this. There should be no barriers. But that sort of community around her and people helping each other, I think she's just amazing. She's just made it. Yeah.
And Teresa, what I like about your programs is, these conversations obviously are framed around gender, but class is a huge obstacle. So you're at the forefront of the gender and class related yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I grew up, by the way, in the inner city, came from a family of 12 and come from a very strong line of women. And I know the importance of, no class should get in the way. We should all give the opportunities to everybody. We should not leave people alone. They're definitely not left behind. But that's what I love about. I've been very lucky in an organisation that is embracing that. They open the doors. They're helping unlock opportunities and making the possible, like the impossible possible, really.
Great.
So
Lorraine, tell us about what you do.
Great. Thanks very much for having me, folks. So look, I think the reality of the situation is women get things done, right? I think we can all agree on that.
All in favour?
So what I do with Fierce is essentially I support women founders in tech to scale and grow their tech startups, all right? Not just in Ireland, but abroad as well. And I think, look, I could sit here and talk about the challenges all day long that are associated with that, but I think everybody in the room is going to be aware of them in one way or another. In terms of it being mostly a boys' club, women tend to get less investment. They tend to have less technical expertise, purely because historically there has been more men in STEM subjects. So it can be more difficult for them to have technical expertise in the team. And then there's another piece there around traction and actually being able to, I suppose, go out to the market, gain customers, etc. So look, plenty of different obstacles and that type of thing for women founders to get over. I would actually disagree with Regina's point that we don't have enough women in there. I think we do. I think we don't have enough women progressing, and I think that's actually the problem. So the way that I look at this is, I'm actually very, very positive about the landscape in general, but the way that I look at this is that we need to make sure that women founders are getting in contact with the right people, okay? The people that can actually make the difference. It's not about us sitting down and actually educating people, men or women. It's about getting them financially and emotionally involved where they actually want that change to happen. They want that change to occur. And it's only about getting them involved in a way that is meaningful to them that we will actually make change happen. And that's something we focus a lot on in Fierce. The second thing that we focus on is actually around data and the standardization of data. And essentially what I mean here is we want to remove gender washing. So if I go to one organisation, they might say, well, I count a woman founder as anybody who owns 2% of equity in a company or more. That is very different to owning 20 or 30% of equity in a company. And you'll find, depending on where you go in terms of organisation or initiative, that will change so that they can make their organisation or initiative look good in the face of the media. So something that I want us to focus on is data standardization, not just from an Irish perspective, but actually look at that on a global perspective. Because if we start coming up with our own standardization of data, we're going to start comparing apples with oranges, and we're not going to know if we're actually making progress where it counts. The last piece that we're looking at is actually around policy, okay? And it's a multi-pronged program. It's not as simple as saying, like, we need to change women or we need to change the system. There's a multiple facade of things that actually need to be looked at and reviewed here. And the last one being policy. And I am sick and tired of hearing people talk about quotas, right? Talking about using the stick. Why can't we use the carrot? Why can't we use incentivization? Why can't we say, if you invest in women founders, or if you do this thing with women founders, we are going to give you X, instead of saying, if you don't do this, we're going to do Y to you. Because as far as I'm concerned, if somebody comes to me and says, you have to do this because we say so, I will tell them to. And if you come to me and if you say, if you consider doing this, we will reward you with Y, well then, now you have my attention. And now you have me bought into what you're doing, and I'm far more likely to do it. So I think the way that we're actually looking at a lot of the things in the ecosystem at large, not just in Ireland, by the way, like we're talking abroad, we're talking in Europe, we're talking over in the States, etc. The way we're looking at this and the way we're approaching what we're doing around this, we need to take a second look at that. Okay, we need to take a second look at how we're doing it and the knock-on impact of that in the wider ecosystem. And the big thing that I focus on with Fierce, the thing that I'm really, really passionate about is how do we do these things differently? How do we bring it back so it is focused directly on impact for the founders, on impact on the wider ecosystem? We don't need to keep doing things the way we have been doing them in the past. We don't need to do this tick boxing stuff. It's actually just as easy to do the impactful stuff. And you look good in the face of it as well. So it's a win-win here for everybody.
So what kind of things have worked in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So a really, really simple example is, again, going back to tech talent, okay? The way I view this is that there's fewer women engineers out there. Therefore, as a woman, I am less likely to know another woman who's in tech in comparison to, if I'm a man, I will very likely know another man who is in tech, okay? So something that we have looked at is actually, we ran the first ever talent matchmaking event in Ireland, where we matched women-founded companies with technical talent, like software engineers. And people actually hired directly out of that. We had something like 400 conversations happened in that day alone. And then we actually put a database together in the back of that. And we will run the second talent matchmaking event in February of next year. So that's a really simple example. But then something else is getting women founders in front of investors, getting them access to that finance. Angel investment, crowdfunding, government funding, venture capitalism, not just in Ireland, but abroad as well. You need them to be at the table. And the beautiful thing about getting them that access to finance instead of this knowledge sharing all the time is that then the investors begin to see the quality of these women and what they're building. They get to buy into it. And that's how you make the change happen.
Great, Lorraine. Regina, one thing, I have a friend who works in a big engineering company, and engineering is one of those areas where there are big gender gaps, you know, on average throughout the company. So they're trying really hard to help women and promote them, and they set up a women's network. And she said, but I don't want to be in the women's network. It's the men's network I need to be in. So in your experience in politics, like what has helped women to come through on that?
It's hard to say that we've actually helped women to come through, because to Lorraine's point, we introduced gender quotas a number of years ago, and I have to tell you, I don't know a woman that likes them, because they're always weaponised against us, and the only reason you get elected, or the only reason you got selected. And then the other downside to it is that we do select a whole lot of women, and then we get told, well, you only selected her because she couldn't win in that town. Or, so I don't see an upside. And when you look, we're all kind of patting ourselves on the back that the election that happened 2 weeks ago has returned 2% more women. Well, we made parties run 40% women as quotas this year, and yet we returned to, so like, it's not working. So we need to wake up one day and say, if we keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, we all are mad. To answer your direct point, I don't ever feel that I'm probably 15 or 16 years now in national and local politics, and now in European politics. I don't ever have felt sitting around any table that I was treated better or worse because I'm a girl or a woman. I don't think I was brought to the cabinet table, I hope, because I was a woman. And I've never felt discrimination behaviour from any of my male colleagues. But the one thing I genuinely have noticed, and it's a criticism of women by a woman, is that for some strange reason we seem to think that we have to compete with other women for the women's places, as opposed to saying there are 15 tables or seats at the cabinet table. I'm not competing with the 3 women so I can get there. I should be competing with the 12 men to get some of them off their bums, off their seats. And that's a real woman's problem. And I don't know until we actually change that to say we have to stop ripping the back off each other to get the 3 seats that are at the table and say, how can we collectively make it 4 of us and 5 of us and 6 of us, so that there is a critical mass of women, which is a different style of approach to every facet of life, so that when a critical issue comes to the table, you're not sitting there, one of 3 women saying, Jesus, when I open my mouth, well, I said, well, I look like the softie and the like, there needs to be a critical mass. But we're part of the problem because we compete with each other as opposed to competing with the men.
It's the very same in media, like it'll be a woman's job out, and then women are supposed to be competing with the women. And what we did that about 10 or 15 years ago, we set up a little women in media conference down in Ballybunny. I think you might have been at it at some time. So everybody got to be friends with each other instead of, as you say, ripping the back off each other. Just before I go to Sinan, I want to ask him about something. So in the digital aspect, say, of your political life, has it presented opportunities like Instagram or whatever that you can actually leapfrog maybe existing structures that might have been a block to you in the past, and you're able to communicate directly with people and to particular constituencies? Or is there so much hassle it's not worth it? Like in the round, how do you view the digital world?
I don't think we would be able to reach the people. Like years ago when I was a kid, and I lived in a political house more than you did, right? There was always politics in our house. And I can remember Mum as a kid folding paper leaflets, that had been printed off the back of typewriters and photocopied, and you'd go out on the weekend and you'd drop them, right? It was so slow, so tedious. You were never getting to an entire constituency. Today, I can sit down and do something on Instagram or Facebook or Google or whatever, and specifically target thousands of people and know for paying my few bob, which is probably less than the printing cost of a leaflet, I can reach that target. That's phenomenal. In our business, it's all about communication. If you don't know who I am and what I'm doing, you're never going to vote for me. If you can engage with me and you like me because, I liked your Instagram or whatever platform is, that's so powerful, particularly in the imparting of information. And is there a downside? Absolutely. But the difference is, I can remember having a conversation with Jim O'Callaghan years ago in RTE. In the only way Jim can say, don't be going on with your nonsense sort of attitude, right? I was complaining about, I think I'd gotten something horrible said to me that morning, and I was just complaining about it. He said, I don't even look at it. And I remember thinking, he's mad. How do you know what people think about you if you don't look at it? Now I don't even look at it. And so the downside of that, though, is it desensitizes you, because you kind of think, right, that's just part of the new normal. It shouldn't be part of the new normal, and we do need to fix it. But the opportunities that we have to reach people in such masses is phenomenal.
And on that too, I remember maybe 10 years ago I would have been reading comments about myself on Twitter or something, crying, feeling absolutely awful about it. And last night someone said something nice about me on Twitter, so the comments all underneath were, this is a terrible person. I just don't care anymore. Like, it does desensitize you, like it is. So I'm not sure whether that is a good or a bad thing, but you do stop caring in the end. So Sinan, I want to go back to that point about cultural norms and that piece about the girls aged, say, 18 to 25 who've become accustomed to being asked for sexually explicit photographs and things like that. So for my generation, like, we think that's bonkers, but it is normal for them. So how do you shift those standards?
Actually, I'm not sure whether it's normal for them as well, because they are also asking for denormalizing this with the workshops by just raising awareness among the users. So this is just another research result that is just coming with the same group of people that we just, had some conversations. Because as a researcher's perspective, maybe I can definitely highlight it. Co-designing the safety measures is just a cornerstone for us to deal with this situation, and people are just asking for it because they just would like to be involved in the solution generation process individually, to just be heard. to be the voice of their own experiences. And this is just bringing us to co-design any kind of safety measures with the users themselves. So this is going to be bringing us to just, meet parents, educators, tech giants, legislators, or any other person. But when we just think about these group of people, including us, I'm sorry to talk about all, but this is too top-down. And this is just understood by the participants of our research that they are just looking for something from bottom up. So they would like to be heard with the solutions, and they would like to be just involving in the solution process. So this is the same actually. I do not want to say that they just normalize it. They would like to be denormalize it for sure, but they would like to be seen, heard, and just be involved in the process of denormalizing this situation. It is just a kind of bad transference from the physical experience to the digital one. And since it's just open to anyone and everyone with one click, it is just bringing another level of hardship to deal with. But if they are heard based on the co-designing safety measures, it could be really good for them as well to feel themselves secure enough in the digital platforms, not only based on gender dimensions, but for all the users. So this is just how we are looking at the issues practically. Just as an example, we are just working on 3 different technological interventions to just create a kind of secure and safe place for children in the internet platforms. One is the TOSI app in collaboration with Childline ISPCC and Vodafone Ireland. I'm not working for that team, but I can just name them as well. They are just creating some content on the application to just raise awareness for the kids, how to protect them, how to not misbehave towards the others or some other things. And all the possible user experience tests are done with the children themselves who could be the possible users. For us, I'm working for Chirp software, which is just going to be a kind of embedded mobile phone level software to prevent cyberbullying, online grooming, and self-harm behaviors online. So we are just co-designing it with the kids who are going to use that software in their own mobile phones, which are decided by their parents, of course, because this is going to be embedded in their mobile phones to be used by them. When we look at the numbers in Ireland, 98% of youngsters just get their first smartphone while they are 11 or 12. So when we just think about those ages, which is definitely based on their parental decisions or discussions, we need to be really careful about whether they are involved in our solution systems or not to make it everything top down. Because when we just try to invite them into the process to denormalize any misbehaviors like this, not to be transferred from the physical to digital, we definitely say them that you're not going to live in your own filter bubbles. So you'll be heard, you'll be seen, you'll be just involved in the process, and we will be just trying to create any solution, any possible help that we can just support you with the help of your own input. And for example, based on the teacher's perspective, they are also in the spotlight to deal with this issue, without having any gender-based breakdown, because they are just faced with these issues transferring in their classrooms as well. There's just another program which was just created by Anti-Bullying Center, which is called as FUSE project, to just raise awareness among teachers how to deal with these issues, to just let them know what they can do, what kind of steps they can have. And the program was just developed with the help of the teachers as well. Because if you're not practically know that whatever you're going to use to solve these issues, it's not going to give you the power that you feel secure enough.
One thing I discovered was when I got my youngest son a smartphone when he was 11 or 12, younger, 10 or 11, and they were all on Snapchat. So someone gave me a tip. I downloaded Snapchat too, and I'm on it, and there's a map on it, so I can see where he is when he's running around the town misbehaving. So you can use some of those creepy surveillance tools for your own good. You look like you don't approve of that.
It's just another discussion that I do not want to open up here.
I feel the judgment. I could feel it.
No, of course. I can't just be in the shoes of a parent, so that's why I'm not judging, of course.
Oh yes, yes. Teresa, you were talking about how in Google, you know, so your boss is a woman and the boss's boss is a woman and all of that. So for a tech-dominated world, what did they do that they were able to create that situation?
I think, to be honest with you, they just embrace very powerful women. But like there's been lots of opportunity and lots of discussion, and obviously every company faces, like we've discussed, diversity, but I think it's down to their talent. I mean, the head of engineering is a woman in Google. I mean, she's absolutely unbelievable. But there's lots of discussion to make sure that women are empowered, and I think, again, even seeking that out. But I think what Sinan mentioned, just if I could move towards that, if that's okay. I do love the opportunity of listen, learn, and then deliver, because I don't think we're probably doing enough of that. The grassroots, the work in the schools, the work in the homes, because I've come across families, and there could be one-parent families as well, that are struggling. Lorraine and I were only talking earlier on about when it was COVID time and everyone had to pivot very quickly online, that we were communicating right across the world, or maybe a classroom online, and there were children with cracked phones maybe in the local homes and trying to, you know, pivot. We need to do this, we need to get educated. That kind of thinking, in a sense, I mean, even around the safety online, in the homes, training up parents, training up children. The Be Internet Legends is a brilliant program that we're rolling out in schools at the moment. The Be Internet Legends is a program that's all online safety, but we're going into the schools. We introduce opportunities where children can feel, touch, see, and talk about it. And there's little quizzes, there's opportunity. Every kid loves a little quiz and a test. But we need to probably be doing more of that, grassroots, on the ground, but it takes the teachers as well. We're doing the opportunities where we have to make sure teachers are trained up. We leave the schools and with a smart toolbox that they have to be equipped. My background in therapy, I remember going in and teachers are expected to deal with the most craziest things, because they're probably there 7 to 8 hours a day with your child. So we are equipping them the best we can, but I do think that smart toolbox needs to be rolled out by everybody in terms of how we get this right as a village.